Okay, then let's start the class. So in the last class what we were discussing was we were talking about we have just started the chapter called as Plant Kingdom, and the first group of plants, that is algae kotha okoman start korisilo, right? The basic points about algae we have not completed, so we are going to continue algae itself, right? Algae kisuman bostu jeneke the plant body of algae is called as, it is called as thelophytes, no? Hebilak basic points bilak ba habitat of algae, kot thake, fresh water, terrestrial, etc., etc. Next is about the forms of algae, unicellular forms, colonial forms. These are certain points that we have already discussed. So we'll be continuing with that. Aji likha, I think the last thing that we were discussing was reproduction in algae, right? What we remember is, in case of algae, all the three types of reproduction could be seen, that is vegetative, asexual and sexual. Vegetative reproduction, binary fission and fragmentation we have talked about with certain examples. Then asexual reproduction with the help of different types of spores, right? Some spores form during favorable conditions, some form during unfavorable condition. A stage called as a pulmonar stage, formation of a echinate. These are the things that we have discussed. Aji heading koriba sexual reproduction in algae. Sexual reproduction in algae, first point likha, the male sex organ So, the important point is a word called as oogonium, because we know whenever we talk about sex organ, enteridium and archegonium, these are the two terms that we know, right. But archegonium is not present in the group called as LG. Instead, it starts appearing from the group called as bryophytes, and that is the reason why bryophytes are called as the first archegoniates, right. So, A to J to unique point, ইয়াৰ ওপৰতে question আহে, is archegonia present in LG or absent? It's absent in LG. Next question is the sex or the female sex organ in LG is called as, right. Next is, as far as the sex organs are concerned, no, enteridium and archegonium. Normally যেতিয়া আমি enteridium আৰু archegoniumৰ কথা কিটা কওঁ, the enteridium to কেনেকুৱা দেখায়, it is round or globular in structure, and if you are using the word archegonium or the female sex organ in case of higher plant, especially in case of bryophytes onwards, then archegonium কেনেকুৱা হয়, flask shaped structure, right. So, inside the enteridium, what will you find is the male male gametes, and inside the archegonium you will see the female gamete, right. Normally enteridium or ki hoy, if this is the enteridium, no, enteridium or ekhon ki thake, covering thake, and this covering is called as ki jacket, right. Bryophytes onwards jetia ami enteridium or archegonium kotha kom, then we will see that either it is enteridium or it's archegonium, both of them will have an extra layer of cells, and this would be called as the jacket layer. The functions of the jacket layer and all those, we will talk about it later, right. So, yate male sex organ thake, I mean ki male gametes, yate female gametes, but in case of LG ki likhisu koason, they are unicellular and non-jacketed. So, this is a word that you need to remember. Bryophytes onwards, sob sex organs bilak jacketed hobo, kintu LG ki hoy, sex organs bilak non-jacketed hoy, right. Next, obviously the exception. In LG, the sex organs are non-jacketed, but jacketed sex organ is present in the plant called as Cara, which is also called as stonewort. Stonewort or question kiya hai, obviously multicellular jacketed, eruka word, and next is the diagram. I think I have already said about it. The female sex organ, the male sex organ, question kene kya hai, what is nucleus, what is globule, which one is male, which one is female, that's the first question. Second question is, diagram to di dibo, A and B likhibo, you have to identify, right. Is this over? Next likha, sexual reproduction is of 3 types in LG. Sexual reproduction is of 3 types in LG. Three types boli kole, isogamous, anisogamous and oogamous. Since we have already discussed what is iso, aniso and oogamous in the kingdom Protista, so we are not going to write it down again. Because the definition aru nilikho, but we know that thing, right. So, here what we are going to do is just give the examples. since it's a lower plant, sexual reproduction or 3 types of sexual reproduction could be seen: isogamy, anisogamy and oogamy. The basic differences we have already discussed, right? Now what is important from this point? Some of the examples, obviously it's important, example wise question hai, but if you notice we have one example that is common for all. If you are talking about Chlamydomonas, what is Chlamydomonas? It is an example of a green algae. What type of a green algae? Unicellular and multicellular. So unicellular, so you have to know that. But to be specific, if you are talking about the specific species, no, different species of Chlamydomonas undergo different types of sexual reproduction. From the examples that we have seen here, one statement that we can say is, যেহেতু oogamous type আছে, anisogamous type দেখাইছে, isogamous type দেখাইছে, so I think we can say a statement that Chlamydomonas shows evolution of sexual reproduction. সেইটো ক'ব পাৰো নে নোৱাৰো? কাৰণ lower type of sexual reproduction দেখাইছে, as they are evolved, next group will show the higher one, as they are more evolved, they will show the highest one, right? So statement to likha, so this was all about reproduction. The next topic is life cycle in algae. Heading koriba life cycle. Is this point over? So what is the type of life cycle that you are going to see in algae? Kenuka life cycle dekha pam? Life cycle depends on what? Okay, first tell me the different types of life cycle that you have studied. Haplontic, diplontic, haplodiplontic or diplohaplontic, right? The type of life cycle depends on dash of the organism. Kihor upor depend? Haplontic ketia hobo, diplontic ketia hobo? It is the chromosome number, no? N state or asane, twice N state or asane, no? If it is haploid, then obviously they will undergo haplontic. They diploid, they will undergo diplontic. Together with this, I think you all have heard the words called as zygotic meiosis, sporic meiosis and gametic meiosis, right? Okay. what is important? This point, right? Brown algae. Jikono questions keneke ahe? Brown algae jikono eta examples di dibo, and you have to identify the type of life cycle. Brown algae examples are suppose fucus, right? What is the life cycle of fucus? So you have to know that it is brown algae, so they will have a diplontic life cycle. Is this over? Next upon life cycle details out korim. Heading koriba haplontic life cycle. I think this is over. এইবিলাক তো বুজি পাইছো অলৰেডি বুজাইছোৱে ন The third type of life cycle, haplodiploidic, as the name suggests, the parent either it will be a haploid, it will produce a sporophyte, or twice end phase. So, we will see alternation of generation, right. Haplodiploidic life cycle could be of two types, isomorphic haplodiploidic or heteromorphic haplodiploidic, right. Ulva, ULVA, ulva aru cladophora, PHORA. Clear? Okay. কিবা বুজি নাপালে সুধিবা দেই So, if the sporophyte and gametophyte look exactly the same, then we say that they are isomorphic, and if they are different, then they are called as heteromorphic. Sporophyte or gametophyte, or what is the basic difference? Sporophyte is also a plant body, gametophyte is also a plant body. A plant body having haploid number or haploid stage or n number of chromosomes, gametophyte, right? If a plant body has twice n or diploid stage, then the plant body is called as a sporophyte, right. Since we are talking about something called as alternation of generation, so both the stages could be seen in the life cycle. যদি sporophyte main plant body dal gametophyte কি produce কৰিছে sporophyte, দুইডাল plant body যদি exactly same তেতিয়াহলে তাক আমি কি বুলি কম isomorphic. যদি plant body is a gametophyte, it produces a sporophyte, but the sporophyte is morphologically different from the parent body, then it will be called as a heteromorphic, haplodiploidic. What is important from this point is just the examples. ঠিক আছে, examples were important, বাকি ইমান important নহয়. And talking about the last point, I think we understand what this line talks about. It is talking about something called as meiospores. Meiospores ki hoy? Product of meiosis. Meiosis ki hoy? Sexual reproduction, right? Disconnect হৈ গৈছে ন এটা কাম কৰোঁ মই প্ৰথমে ডায়াগ্ৰামটো দি দিওঁ হা ডায়াগ্ৰামটো দিয়াৰ পিছত যদি বস্তুটো কনফিউজন আছে তেতিয়াহ'লে চাবা ডায়াগ্ৰাম উইল মেক দ্য কনসেপ্ট মোৰ ক্লিয়াৰাৰ ওকে দুটা different plant sorry unisexual ডায়াগ্ৰামটোত গম পাম ডায়াগ্ৰামটোত আৰু বেছি ইয়াতে ঠিক আছে লিখাটোতো হৈছে দুইটা ডায়াগ্ৰাম আঁকি দিও কম্পেয়াৰ কৰিব পাৰিবা Okay, as far as the diagram is concerned, we know the plant body is a gametophyte, they will produce the sporophyte. So N plant body ki form kore sporophyte. In the sporophyte you will have spore bearing organs or structure that is called as sporangium. In the sporangium what you will see is the spores. The spores will get liberated and ultimately they will germinate into the new plant body, right. Talking about the ploidy, obviously ploidy is important. Plant body of algae generally ki hoy gametophyte except brown algae, that is twice N, but rest of the algae it's always N, right. So tahate fuse kori pelai zygote form koribo, zygote eta plant form koribo, that is called as the sporophyte. Plant boli kole don't start imagining a mango tree or a neem tree, right. Obviously plant boli kole we think of a structure jar niki proper roots, stems or leaves thakibo, not like that, right. Since they are lower plants, no, when I talk about a gametophyte, obviously okoman ketaman cells, right. Sporophyte boli kole a collection of cells, right, with no precise or not you cannot see exact leaves, stems and root like structures, right. So ultimately sporophyte form korile sporophyte ki thakibo sporangium. What is sporangium? The spore bearing structure is called as sporangium. Sporangium or ploidy ki twice N, right, because sporophyte eta part hoy, no, so twice N hobo. So sporangium e ki thakibo spores produce koribo. Spores bilak keneke produce koribo? By the process of meiosis, right, since we are talking about sexual reproduction. So if it produces or if it undergoes meiosis, the spores that are formed are called as meiospores. What is the number of spores that will be formed by one meiospore? I mean by one meiosis. Eta meiosis hole keita daughter cell produce kore? 4ta. So obviously 4 of them would be formed, right. In this case also we see something exactly the same, but there is a slight difference between both of them. What is the difference? Diagram to sai pelai kuntu difference ki kosun? Yeah, the gametophyte, right. In this case ki the male and the female gametes are formed from the same gametophyte. Edal plante produce korise. Yate kintu male plante male gamete produce korise, female plante female gamete produce korise, right. So this is all about life cycle in case of algae. Is the concept clear? So up till now what we are discussing is we are talking about the general points of algae, right? Algae as a whole ami discuss kori aso. After this we need to talk about the respective algae, or we have to talk about the classification of algae, right? Hit a point. Male and female gametes are produced on the same gametophyte, right? So before going into classification, ketaman examples of algae ami janibo laibo. So heading koriba examples of algae, but some examples of algae. Tabale kisuman examples of algae, they have certain common names. Aru he common names kini janibo. So here we are writing certain examples of algae, not sequence of likha nai, right? These are not the examples of only green algae or brown algae or red algae. It is a mixture of everything, right? If you are talking about chlorella, obviously it's a green algae. If you are talking about fucus, it's a brown algae. If you are talking about Batrachospermum, it's a red algae, right? So we have a collection of this. Apart from this, aru ketaman examples anibo laibo, but not their scientific name. If this is over, some more boli likha. एखिनी होल दिस पार्ट कौन सा नंबर कितना लेमिनेरिया लेमिनेरिया हाँ उसको लाइक यू राइट इट सी एप्रन APRON सी एप्रन और इट इज कॉल्ड एज सी केल्प KELP क्लियर sea apron or sea kelp. Chlorella लिखा हुआ है Spirogyra. Parasitic algae I already disu niki, Cephalourus and Harviella, right? Remember red rust of tea, right? Last class I discussed koriso, so parasitic algae I yat nilikho. Oscillatory blue-green algae. Blue-green algae, there is a confusion between swap. Blue-green algae, but it's a kingdom of Monera. They are also unicellular. Blue-green algae are photosynthetic. Algae is also photosynthetic and oscillatory is also unicellular. They have a confusion in their placement, right? So we can consider them as algae into blue-green algae. Blue-green algae is not algae, now we know. Right? Kintu algae buliu consider kore, blue green algae buliu consider. Kintu best placement ki blue green algae kintu. Right? Kintu jihetu they are chlorophyllous and both of them are photosynthetic. Algae and blue green algae both similarity ase, so almost eke buli consider kore. Right? Biofertilizer. Next is epizoic, endozoic, and epiphytic. Words kita to gom paise epiphytic mane ki above plants, but on plants, right? Next, if you are talking epizoic on animals, and endozoic ki epiphytic. Epi is above, phytic is plant, right? Epizoic, epi is above, zoic is a word related with animals, right? Next is endozoic, inside the body of the organism. So these are certain examples. If this is over, classification of algae heading koriba. And when we are talking about these examples, parasitic algae report question ahe. Parasitic algae jihetu agote likhiswe, so please mark it as important. Right, whenever we talk about classification of algae, we have to study the chart that is given in your NCERT book. Should I write it down or you will write it down from your book? Kitabot to say there is no point of wasting time now, right? So please leave a space. If you want to write it down, you can write it down, or you study from the book directly, right? In the chart ki diya ase certain headings or underot compare kora hoise jeneke common name, or maybe a category called as green algae, the pigments they have, the reserve food they have, the type of flagella they have, the cell wall ki unique characteristics ase, so ekon chart ase, right? If anyone brought the NCERT book, I think you know the page number. Please tell me the page number. 33. Ekon likhi loba, ha? Apart from the chart, jekhini important point ase, ami hekhini likhim. Chart khonot flagella part to swason. Flagella ki likha ase chlorophyte এই ওয়ার্ড গিটা আছে নেকি আইসোকন্ট হেটেরোকন্ট আছে নেকি নাই নো যাৰ যাৰ চাৰ্টখন আছে তাৰ সাইডত লিখি লবা হা যাৰ ব্ৰাউন এলগিৰ সাইডত হেটেরোকন্ট লিখি লোৱা brown algae because they will have two flagella that are morphologically different. So the condition is called as heterocont, and in case of green algae they will have isocont, ISOKONT, means they will have two or more flagella or gutegidal flagella ekai type morphologically he karan tak ami ki boli ko isocont. So question ki ahibo pore isocont condition is seen in heterocont condition is seen in, right? As far as red algae ki condition dekha pam isocont ne heterocont isocont ne heter tomar chart khon soku agot thaki pele tumi kobo par nai kyo red algae ki ase red algae isocont ne heterocont নহয় বস্তুটো কি জানা chart খন চালে question to directly chart মতে নাহিবও পাৰে ন so যদি খুদে red algae is isocont or heterocont condition seen? No, it is not seen because flagella nai ta kenike isocont hobo no. So the point that's important is absent. Absent to bahut important likhi lua. Karan I think you remember when we have discussed about blue green algae no, ami ki koisile blue green algae and red algae have many points in similar. Blue green algae ro ki nasile flagella nasile locomotion absent. In case of red algae also locomotion absent. Blue green algae was blue green in color because of the different pigments that are present. Those pigments are also seen in case of red algae. Next is remember something called as Godikoff phenomenon. Godikoff's phenomenon. Eneke who to koisa then first time hunisa. Okay, I mean red algae pohote ami akoi black porhime. Godikoff's phenomenon said what? That according to the depth where they are found, they can keep changing their color. Surface of jedi blue green algae thake belek color hobo. Major jekat jedi belek thake, it will be of different color. If the blue green algae are present at the bottom of the sea, then their color would be different. So this is exactly same that is seen in case of red algae also, right? Hebo am pisot discuss kor. As of now, green algae buli heading kora. Some points about green algae. Okay, what is the other name of green algae? Chlorophycine and chlorophyta. Phyci to ki bostu? Phyci to ki bostu? Remember taxonomic hierarchy. Phyci thakile ki boli koy hetuk? Division. Right? So yate ki hobo chlorophyta. Thik ase? Class ki L's asile, AC asile. So according to the suffix we will be talking about their categories, right? So green algae aru eta naam ki chlorophyci boli nokoi pelai the better word is chlorophyta. Thik teneke if you are talking about red algae it's rhodophyta, right? If it's brown algae it's phaeophyta, right? Oh, phyci asile. Oh, class e hobo. Phyta is the other name. Green algae is also called as chlorophyta. Chlorophyci boli ami general. Chlorophyci word to jodi use kora chlorophyci and algae ko boleibo. Bujhe pase? It's the same thing. Kintu the other name of green algae is chlorophyta. Chlorophyci no hoy. Right? Eneo hetu upor question nahe. So likha gute gita likhi dia green algae, chlorophyta, chlorophyci. Thik ase? No confusion at all. Okay, out of the three types of algae, green, brown, aru red, advanced kuntu, primitive kuntu. Green algae is advanced, right? Why they are advanced? Because of the many of the similarities that they share with the higher group, right? Bahut gita characteristics similar. ক্লাস নহয় ক্লোরোফিল লেখা chlorophyll A and B, chlorophyll A comma B, yes, and carotenoids are also present. Okay. Acetabularia, out of the examples now, green algae boli kole, you have unicellular green algae, you have colonial green algae, you have multicellular green algae also, right? Example of a unicellular motile green algae, example of a unicellular non-motile green algae. This is something that we have already done in the form of a chart. Now we are talking about this one. This line is important. Because the largest unicellular algae ki hoy Acetabularia. It is also called as the umbrella plant. It's something looks like this. And one point. Generally, it is not asked যদি সুধে nucleus to this is one cell no দেখাত বহুত ডাঙৰ one cell তাৰ nucleus to ক'ত থাকিব at the base right একদম rhizoidal area কি থাকিব তাহাঁতৰ nucleus to থাকিব next লিখা number 2 colonial ha please ये वाला मोस्ट एडवांस एल्गी उसके साइड में कॉस्मोपॉलिटन इन नेचर मीन्स फाउंड एवरीवेयर ओके नेक्स्ट लिखा colonial colonial एग्जाम्पल की आसिले already आमी लिखिसु एबिलाक बस्तु give me an example of a colonial green algae जोने निकी colony থাকে volvox right A colony with a fixed number of cells is called as synovium, right? So we are talking about a colony where the number of cells in the colony is always fixed. Means if suppose we are talking about this 5 forming a colony, after reproduction also daughter cells produce koribo, they will also remain in a colony. Tahatoru keita thakibo, pastai thakibo, right? Every time they reproduce, they will form a colony of fixed number of cells. Such a condition is called as synovium. These are the forms. Rest, when we talk about green algae, you have to talk about the reserve food, the pigments, right? Next is their flagella. Hekhini bostu moi likhi nidiu karon chartor prai poriba, right? So rest of the point from the chart, so we have to talk something called as pyrenoid, right? Chloroplast to jano, what is a chloroplast? It is nothing but a cell organelle, right? Chloroplast bhitorot ki thake, specifically from photosynthesis point of view, it is the storage of the pigments, right? So when we talk about chloroplast, in case of algae, there are different shapes of chloroplast but different types of chloroplast, because we know plants has been evolved from the algae, from that group called as algae to the higher plants. As the evolution continued, the shape of the chloroplast also kept on changing. Right. So, junto ami higher plants or chloroplast or shape dekha pao, that is not the shape that you see in case of lower algae. Right. In case of green algae, the shape of the chloroplast would be exactly the same as in case of a higher plant, right? In case of gymnosperms, angiosperms, tahator junto chloroplast or shape hoy, green algae junto chloroplast or shape hoy, it's almost the same. But if you are talking about lower algae, they will not have that particular shape. Instead, they will have different types and different shapes. According to the shapes, they will have different names for that. Right. So, types of chloroplast hekini ami poribo lagibo. Thik ase, can anyone tell me what is the type of chloroplast in case of a higher plant called as? Ki type of chloroplast ase? Chloroplast to ase moi janu. Ki type of chloroplast? You have a particular name according to the shape of the chloroplast. Chloroplast to dekhat kenekua? Triangle, rectangle, circle, oval, kenekua? Square. Ah, ekdom moza. Here. So, in case of higher plants, chloroplast ki hoy, discoid, right? So, in case of green algae, chloroplast ki hobo, discoid, but other algae they will different. Cup shaped chloroplast, spiral shaped chloroplast, cup shaped chloroplast found in Chlamydomonas, spiral, spirogyra, right? Reticulate, net like, etc., right? As of now, if you are talking about Chlamydomonas, the most common example, no? Something like this. So, they will have a cup shaped chloroplast, etu ki hobo chloroplast. Apart from this chloroplast inside the cell, they will have a storage organ that is called as pyrenoid, right? Pyrenoid ki hoy, we generally consider it as a storage organ. Eta pyrenoid or question ki ahe, one or two pyrenoids ne many pyrenoids. Certain algae have one or two pyrenoids, certain algae have many pyrenoids. For example, Spirogyra, tahantor pyrenoids bahut kita thake. In case of Chlamydomonas, which generally it's confined to one or two or maybe one, right? Next question ahe etu line or upor. Pyrenoid ki thake. The question could be, or the statements could be, pyrenoid contains starch as well as proteins. Ne, pyrenoids contains proteins as well as starch. Mainly ki thakibo tamane proteins e thakibo. Apart from proteins to starch thakibo. So etu upor question ahe etu line saba. Haji green algae to cake for just 3 examples, no? And tapsat likha economic importance of green algae. As we have said in the first class, whenever we talk about economic importance, generally one and only example that we remember is chlorella, right? Space algae, edible algae, etc. Tar uporiu ketaman ase. so this is the economic importance. Generally we are concerned with chlorella. And the last point for today is so ইয়াৰ ওপৰত question আহে এইখিনি এখন পঢ়িবা question আহিব পাৰে যে anything no reticulate chloroplast is seen in cup shaped is seen in star shaped is seen in right so এইখিনি আমি পঢ়িম spiral তো আমি জানো if you are talking about a cell like this right oh the মই চাব লাগিব বস্তুটো চাই দিম জেনাৰেলি সয়েল ইৰোশন বুলি ক'লে ন আমি ব্ৰায়োফাইটছ বা মছ এজ এন এক্সাম্পল লওঁ ঠিক নাই কাৰণ মছখিনি যেতিয়া থাকিব কাৰণ এলগিবোৰটো জেনাৰেলি একুৱেটিক ইন নেচাৰ ৰাইট চ' কমন কোন হ'ব উইথ গ্ৰুপ অফ প্লেণ্টছ ইটছ অলৱেজ দ্য মছ অৰ ব্ৰায়োফাইটছ কিন্তু এলগি বস্তুটো মই চাই দিম So ultimately we know that discoid chlorella, discoid chloroplast code thakibo also in case of right. I think this is all for today. In the next class we will be continuing with algae. Brown algae would be the topic of discussion. Thank you. That's all. Thank you.